Hey folks, Mr. Finley here. This is just a quick video on the dramatic unities. So as we discussed in class already, these unities come from Aristotle. Aristotle came up with a number of things that we use today when writing plays, and it's important to note that he didn't just make these things up and we follow them just because he's old. What he observed were lots and lots of plays. He watched a huge number of plays in ancient Greece as drama was being developed, and he observed that in the successful plays there were certain elements that they had in common. And he wrote them down, and we now use them because he observed that when you use them, the play is successful. So we don't just do it because it was Aristotle. We do it because he observed that they work in plays. Among those elements is the linear plot structure with the protagonist and the rising action that we've talked about in class. But he also observed these things that he called the unities. Unity of time, place, and action. And by that he meant unity of place meant that the play takes place in one location. We don't have lots of different scenes and different locations and different sets and different settings. It's one location. Unity of time, by that he meant that it takes place in real time. It's not like the lights go down and they come back up and we're 5 minutes later or 5 years later. What he technically said was that the action should take place in 24 hours, but in practical terms it means that what we see on stage is real time rather than jumping back and forth in time. And unity of action meant one plot and no subplots confusing us. Now, the fact is, we don't see these unities used much anymore. Because most plays and movies we think of jump all over in time and in place, and have lots of different settings and that sort of thing. But the fact is that in a play, every time you do that, every time you break a unity, going from one setting to another setting or from one time to another time, you slow the play down a little bit because you've got to have a set change, or even if you don't change the set, there may be a light change, or even if you don't do that, there's some dialogue that has to be used to explain that, oh, we're 5 years later now. And so every time you do that, it slows the action down a little bit. In a full-length play, if you're writing a 2-hour play, it's okay to do that a few times, and virtually all plays do. Shakespeare's plays, for example, famously ping-ponged all over the place. He didn't care too much about these unities. But the shorter the play is, the more those breaks intrude. Imagine if you've got a 10-minute play and you spend 2 minutes of that time doing set changes, that's a lot of time sitting in the dark. So basically, the shorter the play, the more important these unities are. And the other thing is, even in a long play, holding to these unities gives your play momentum and focus. It means that we're never away from the characters. We never have, a set change or scene change to let us catch our breath. So holding to the unities gives your play a laser-like focus. And the shorter the play is, that becomes really important. Now keep in mind that these unities do not apply to film or television. And that's why when people hear about these unities, they at first think they sound really weird, because we're used to seeing movies and TV more than plays. And in movies and in television, you can change the setting and the time almost instantly by cutting from one scene to another. So breaking the unities doesn't slow you down on film or in television. So the unities don't apply to screenplays, but we're not writing screenplays. We're writing stage plays right now. So you should always think about, how is this actually going to exist on stage when you're writing it? And if something exists on stage, then when we go from one setting to another, then we're going to have a scene change of some sort. It's going to slow us down. And that one way that we can get around that slowing down is by holding to these unities of Aristotle's. So for the 10-minute plays that you're going to be writing, I'm going to ask you to hold to the unities of time, place, and action.